Good evening and welcome to this second part of Weekend Prime, where we discuss health issues on Health Digest and we look at various aspects of your health. And today we are discussing emergency scenarios that may occur at home and what you need to do before you even call for help, or when you're calling for help. What are the likely instructions that the dispatcher or the paramedic on the other end of the line will give you in order to save a life or to buy time for your loved one when they're in need of that help? And with me today is a team from the Kenya Red Cross Society. I have the Secretary General, Dr. Abbas Gulet, from the Kenya Red Cross Society. I have Dr. Muthoni Ntonjira, who will be simulating and giving us a bit of insight about what is done and why it needs to be done. She's the Medical Director at the Kenya Red Cross Society, and also Vincent Makori, who is a paramedic. And we'll start straight from the likely scenarios that are likely to happen at home when somebody has collapsed, if a child has choked. And we'll start from just if an adult has collapsed. And we'll start with you, Dr. Muthoni. Assuming somebody's at home, the adult or an older person has collapsed, they're not responding, the relatives or their loved ones are calling onto him, they are not responding at all, they have tried everything, and this person is not responding. And now they've picked up the call and they've called the Kenya Red Cross Emergency Medical Services, and they've got the dispatcher. What information, first of all, should they give you, and what instructions are you going to give them even as they wait for the ambulance to respond?
Thank you, Mercy. So what we normally do is first we'll get the patient's details, the name and the age. Then we'll identify what kind of emergency it is. Like you stated, the patient is unresponsive. So the next step, we're going to request whoever is with the patient, whether they're alone. If they're alone, we'll ask them to put the phone on speaker. If they're with somebody, then they can give instructions to that person to perform the procedure that we're going to describe to them, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation in a patient who doesn't have a pulse.
This is normally what people call a CPR in abbreviation. If people have been wondering what CPR is, this is what we're actually going to demonstrate now. Yeah.
So the first step is to establish whether there's a pulse or not. So we normally instruct them to go to the midline of the neck, then move one finger breadth to the side. At that area, there are some strap neck muscles that there's a slight notch. At that point, you'll be able to feel for a pulse. So if there's no pulse at that point, you immediately need to commence CPR. And the next step is to go to the midline of the chest, and you can use your hand to draw the center of the chest from the armpit. Then at that point, you're going to put your hands together, one below, then interlace one hand on top of the other. Then you're going to give 30 chest compressions at a rate of 100 beats per minute. So the 30 chest compressions, you can give them in about 18 seconds. So after the 30 chest compression, and the purpose of doing the chest compression is to try to establish blood supply to the brain and other vital organs. Then you give 2 breaths. And when you're giving the 2 breaths, the ideal thing, to establish is that first you need to position the head properly. So you extend the head slightly. Then you want to raise the chin. This is so that you can be able to clear the airway. If you have this comes in first aid kits. We do not advocate for direct mouth-to-mouth, So if you have this mouthpiece, you can use it, and it usually comes in various first aid kits. So you give 2 breaths. So after the 2 breaths, then you commence again 30 chest compressions. Once you're done with the 30 chest compression, give 2 breaths. Repeat this cycle about 3 times. And we're hoping by this time, at least the ambulance will have come in and the paramedics can take over from you.
Okay.
Yes.
In the event that they are not able to check for the pulse, can they check for that pulse anywhere else in the body? And if not, why?
The reason we advocate for checking for the pulse at the neck, it's because it's the Yes.
What should a parent or the guardian or the caregiver that is there, what are they supposed to do? So
the first thing you need, in a child who's choked, you'll need to identify whether the airway is patent or not. And the first thing you'll notice is the child is unable to cry, and the child is unable to cough. And this actually shows that the airway is completely blocked. But a child who's able to cough, it means that the airway is only partially blocked and they're they're trying to cough out the foreign object that is obstructing the airway. So in a child who is not coughing, who is unable to cry, the first thing you need to do is hold the baby in this position, yeah, supporting the head and the neck. Then come to the middle of the shoulder blades and give 5 chest thrusts with a bit of force, and you do it downwards, all right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you turn the patient or the baby to the other side. Then this time, at the middle of the chest, in a downwards and upwards motion, then you're going to give another 5 chest thrusts. 5. Then when you do that, you again, if the object has not come out, then you turn the baby again. You repeat this about 5 times. And the key thing to note is that these are instructions that we are giving on phone. So as the ambulance is arriving, and we're hoping that by the time you're able to perform the 5 cycles, help will have arrived. Yeah. So you do this again, repeat the same motion 5 times. You repeat the cycle 5 times, all right? Then if the child has not responded at this point, then it means that whatever is obstructing is actually quite deep in the airway, and the child might be unconscious. If the child is unconscious, again, even in a baby, you'll repeat the same thing. Try to get the pulse. Again, go to the midline. So now
we're doing CPR on the baby, assuming that the object is not able to come out, and this child is now unconscious. They are not responding completely. We commence to CPR.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you have noticed that the child is unconscious and you'd want to commence CPR and there's no pulse, so you'll come again to the middle of the chest, use the armpit to ascertain the exact point of the chest. This time we're not using the palm as we did in the adults. This time we're using 2 fingers. So you'll use your 2 fingers. Again, the depth that you're supposed to go is a depth of about 2 inches deep, so that you can give effective chest compressions. You do them at a rate, again, of 100 beats per minute, and you'll do a cycle of 30 chest compressions. Once the 30 chest compressions are done, in a child, you will not hyperextend the neck. That means you will not tilt the head completely like we did in an adult. All right? In a child, you want to maintain the child in what we call a neutral position. So you'll just lift the chin and raise the head just slightly. This is a motion that also helps to clear the airway. Then you're going to give, again, 2 breaths, check whether the chest is rising, and then continue with the CPR. Again, you repeat this for 5 cycles as you wait for help to arrive.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, another likely scenario that may happen during the holiday season is road traffic accidents. And we've seen actually today there was one really bad accident. What should people do at a scene of an accident?
Okay.
Yeah. Assuming somebody is trapped in the vehicle, they are not able to remove them. What are the likely scenarios that they'll face, and what should they do, what should they not do?
Okay. In a scenario where you are a bystander and you want to come and help victims who've been involved in a road traffic accident, remember the first thing is your safety comes first. So you need to assess the scene, because in as much as a lot of Kenyans are very willing to help and move the patient from the trapped vehicle, they might cause more harm to that patient rather than help with the kindness that they actually just want to help this patient and put in a vehicle and take to hospital. So what to emphasize on, if there's no immediate danger to that particular victim, then avoid moving the patient. But if you do need to move the patient, what we emphasize on is that you need to protect what we call the cervical spine. And what we are referring to is you need to protect the patient's neck. Okay, so that if there's injury to the neck, you do not want to worsen whatever injury they might have sustained at that level of the spine. So you want to make sure that you have immobilized the neck completely and you're not going to move it. Make sure you have at least 3 or 4 people to assist you. So yourself, at the head and you have at least 3 other people. And what we normally do is try to ensure that you do not move the spine as much as possible. Yeah? And those are scenarios where this patient has to be moved from that area because there are imminent dangers if they remain in the vehicle. Yes.
Okay. So how, if they are to move the person, how do they go about it? Assuming that obviously they do not have a spinal board or something to really immobilize this person, what are the likely things that they should improvise or use in order to move this person with minimal injuries or without adding any more injuries?
Okay, if you're in a position to, if you...
Absolutely not do.
The one thing we stress on is please do not move the neck. Please do not move the back. Yeah? If the patient is not in any imminent danger, if they stay trapped in that vehicle, you can wait for help to arrive because most ambulances actually have what is called a Kendrick extrication device. And that Kendrick extrication device is actually placed at the back of the seat, and then it straps the patient, completely immobilizing the cervical spine of the neck, and then the back, and you're able to lift the patient without moving the neck or the back. Yeah. Okay.
So does the same thing apply to infants and children?
For infants, we still insist you do not want to move the head and the spine, but again, it will be easier because they are much smaller. So the same thing applies. You want to make sure you do not move the neck. Again, for children, it will be easier because someone else can make sure they carry the child, even on a flat board, together at the same time as you're moving the head. So it will be a bit easier than in an adult. But the emphasis is do not move the neck, do not move the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the same accident scenario, assuming this person is heavily bleeding.
Yes.
What should people do?
Okay, in scenarios where they're bleeding, this is actually something that anyone can assist in help, and that is bleeding. So you identify where the area, the place that is bleeding. Take a piece of cloth. You can wrap it into a ball, yeah, and then place it directly on the area that is bleeding. Hold on to it until help arrives. Yeah, when help comes, they'll know how to take over the issue or handle the patient from that point on. Yeah, okay. But again, I insist, protect yourself. If you have gloves, please put them on. If it's a situation where the limb is either hanging or partially amputated, and identify, is it a flame that has caused the burn or is it chemical burns, right? If they're chemical burns, just leave it for the medics to handle from that point, because if you put water, it might make things worse. Yeah, but for flame burns, you move the patient from the area that is burning, then remove the clothes that have already burned to stop the burning process, and wait for help to arrive. You can cover the patient with something warm to make sure that they don't get into hypothermia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that detailed description of what somebody needs to do in case of some of these scenarios that may likely happen at home, especially during this festive season where everyone is at home. And Dr. just before we started the simulations, you're saying these are not the only incidents where emergency is required. What are these other incidents where you come in as the Kenya Red Cross?
Well, in addition to what E+ does, I mean, we have many other emergencies. There are building collapsings, there are floods, there are issues of conflict, people also fight, and there are many injuries that would have similar kind of treatment or different one, but there are many, many emergencies that you get every day.
So are you able to respond to most of these emergencies as E+?
Yes, I mean, as Kenya Red Cross, we're very happy that we have E+ as now a true professional, world-class company that is able to respond in all the 47 counties of this country. And we can elaborate more about it, but today, yes, E+, I think, is the premier pre-hospital care services, not only in this country, but in this region.
Okay. And why did, or where did the idea of having an emergency medical service come from for the Kenya Red Cross?
I would say way back in 2007, early 2007, we had one of our senior staff was involved in a road accident outside Thika. She was going for a board meeting of Wasinyiro, where she was a board member working for Kenya Red Cross, but attending board meeting there. She was going to Isiolo. But just outside Thika, between Thika and Muranga at Kennel, she was involved in a road accident. And during that road accident, she got deep cuts and a fracture of the leg. And she was rushed to a health center in Muranga. We got to know about it about 7 in the evening. And once we got to know about 7 in the evening, we believed we had a medical cover, we had an insurance, and that included ambulance services. So when my HR person called me and told me that we have one of our staff involved. In fact, I was called by the late former foreign minister Bonaya Godana, because this was somebody from his constituency, a cousin to him, who had this accident. But so when we realized about it and we asked for an ambulance, we couldn't find an ambulance to go and pick this person. Yet we had paid for an ambulance cover and a medical cover. So we had to use one of our so-called ambulances that we had in the Kenya Red Cross, which was just a transport vehicle with a siren, and it had a bench. So that went and brought her to Nairobi. Long story short, she was then treated. She's now well and alive, thank God. But sitting back as a CEO of the Red Cross, my biggest concern was if this were to happen to me or to happen to anyone in this country, and you cannot get a basic ambulance service, pre-hospital care, in a nation at that time that had close to 40+ million people, then where are we headed as a nation? So I had just come back from having worked internationally in 2005 into the country, and I was shell-shocked actually to find the lack of this basic thing that out there in the rest of the world, in so-called first world, is given. You have it, you don't even have to think about it. So my promise to myself and to my colleagues in Kenya Red Cross as a result of that incident was we will do whatever we can do as an organization that we start this business and that we would provide a world-class pre-hospital care, however long it would take us to do it. Now, unfortunately, it took us 2008 and 2009, and it wasn't until May 2010 when the then Minister for Medical Services, Honorable Anyang' Nyong, launched the ambulance service. With Mercy, with just 5 state-of-the-art ambulances, we were the largest private ambulance owners in this country, in Nairobi actually, in 2010, May 1st of 2010. The rest is history. Today we have 130. We are the largest private ambulance owners, not only in this continent, on this region, in this country, on this region, but we say in the whole of Africa. And I use the word private deliberately because there are governments that have many more ambulances, but they're largely transport vehicles. Yes.
Okay. And so it's been 7 years. Has there been impact or change in the beneficiaries of the ambulance services?
No, I would say huge. You know, today E-Plus has a membership of 12.7 million Kenyans who are getting direct services from E-Plus because they've registered with E-Plus, whether it's through NHIF, whether it's through insurance companies, whether it's through schools, whether it's through colleges, whether it's private individual, whether it's families, whether it's corporates. So we cover 12.5 million Kenyans. On annual basis, E-Plus gets maybe between 15 to 20,000 calls, people calling to ask for services. It's 24/7, 365. It's a world-class ambulance services, has the 2 basic standards, which is basic life support and advanced life. Advanced life is a moving ICU, and you would know in this country of ours, there are very few hospitals that have ICU facilities. So and we're in all the 47 counties. So let's say if you are to bring somebody from Turkana by road with an ICU facility, the next stop would be in Eldoret. If Eldoret is full, then it's all the way to Nairobi, because sometimes even Nakuru may or may not be working, or Kisumu. Kisumu that has 2 or 3 ICU beds. I mean, Nairobi is where the bulk, and Mombasa, the bulk of ICU beds are. So it'll have to come to these major towns. And already the ICU services in these beds in these hospitals are most of the time full anyway. So obviously there's a need to increase our healthcare and critical care or trauma centers around the country, especially what you earlier talking about road accidents. There are black spots and hot spots for road traffic accidents when we talk about Salga or Naivasha or, you know, Taita Taveta and Voi. You know, you actually need to build trauma centers there so that people can be stabilized and treated out there initially, and then you only refer what you need to refer.
Okay. We'll take a break from there and we'll pick it up from that discussion about, well, state of emergency response in Kenya and what the Kenya Red Cross has done, especially in the hardship or the far-to-reach areas. And at this point, I'd like to say that the emergency numbers for the Kenya Red Cross E+ or emergency medical services are 0700-395-395 or 0738-395-395, and their toll-free number is 1199, just in case of an emergency and you need a paramedic, you need an ambulance at the shortest time possible to respond to your emergency. So we'll take a break from there, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Dr. Abbas Gulet and Dr. Muthoni Ntonjira, just to look at the emergency response that the Kenya Red Cross offers Kenyans.